Nerdrotic.com.
I think it's safe to say that Disney Marvel has gone full CW, except in saying that Disney Marvel has gone full CW is an insult to the CW. Dear viewer, the MCU is dying. Marvel Phase 4 has turned into Marvel Stage 4. And yes, Disney Marvel has its Batwoman. Unfortunately, this is with a pretty popular character from the comics, She-Hulk, from the great John Byrne run and a member of the Fantastic Four. I guess we need to remember this is just Kevin Feige keeping his promise to bring more female characters than male characters into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and he's done that to the tune of 2-1. Even the Access Media has called out Marvel for having a directionless Phase 4, but I would argue they have done exactly what they set out to do. The MCU. But what I think She-Hulk does establish, along with the rest of Phase 4 and the CW, is we have a brand new superhero subgenre for woke wine moms. Apparently, She-Hulk is inspired by Ally McBeal, The Practice, and Legally Blonde, and I would argue that's been the inspiration for the entirety of Phase 4, which is strange because when this all-female writing and directing staff was brought on, they admitted that they were inept at creating a courtroom drama, and I would agree. They're also inept at adapting comic books. Disney Plus's She-Hulk has been promoted as a feminist comedy, which is impossible because there's no such thing, but even if it was promoted purely as a comedy, it's missing one key element: comedy. Unless, of course, you're talking about all the unintentional laughter from all of the incredible cringe, especially that final scene, which we will get to. So I guess it's time to start talking about the show. I would warn you about spoilers, but you've seen most of this episode in the trailers and clips. We meet Jennifer Walters, Bruce Banner's cousin. We get some lawyer speak.
Hands 34 to 46.
We get some lawyer speak, which is pretty basic bitch about the abuse of power, something Disney would know an awful lot about. Jennifer's in her office giving her presentation to a paralegal who's also very supportive, giving her the positive affirmation that she constantly needs. And of course, a toxic male, because this is a Disney Marvel production. He gets kicked out because he didn't like the presentation, and quite frankly, I agree with his assessment. It was a little too wordy, and it also sounded like it was written by an idealistic, woke Hollywood wine mom who doesn't really practice what she preaches. And again, because the writers admitted that they were inept at writing a law drama, we just move right past that and rush through the She-Hulk origin, which is drastically changed because of an extension on the Bechdel test. That's right, in the constantly changing intersectional feminist rulebook in Hollywood, we can no longer have a man mentoring a woman or a woman receiving power from a man. Jennifer also breaks the fourth wall like she does in the comic books for the first time in the show. The big difference is it was interesting in the comic books and it wasn't here. And in the clip you all saw, Jennifer Walters is accusing Captain America of being a virgin, and while she's sitting there yapping, she can't see the spaceship that comes out of nowhere and immediately crashes her car where she has to save Bruce Banner. After Jennifer, of course, saves Bruce, a couple of drops of his blood gets into hers, and she immediately hulks out, and we cut to black. To answer the question why Bruce Banner didn't hulk out, well, he created an inhibitor. Apparently, everything that's compelling and or interesting about the Hulk all happens off screen now. What about the spaceship, you ask? Well, that's a very good question. Apparently, it's from Sakaar, leading me to believe that Disney Marvel will eventually get around to destroying Planet Hulk. It's only mentioned one more time in the episode and never brought up again. Now, after Jennifer hulks out for the first time, she wakes up into the woods and then wanders into a bar bathroom where she is approached by a bunch of ladies who think she was assaulted, and instead of telling Jennifer to call the police, they just give her some makeup, some shoes, and send her on her way. And according to our wine mom writers, that scene was the most important in the entire series, so maybe you don't need to watch the rest of it. Now, after the ladies send Jennifer on her way, she almost gets assaulted by a bunch of toxic males. She hulks out, scares the hell out of them, and then she gets tackled by Hulk, and then we cut to black again. And our Disney Marvel hero's journey begins, and we've seen great examples of that in all of Phase 4 and Captain Marvel. What's the hero's journey, you ask? Well, Our hero is great to begin with, and it's up to the rest of the cast and the audience to figure it out by the end. Now, having reviewed all but one live-action Disney Marvel series, and no, I did not watch Miss Marvel, and yes, I do know it had the best reviews and nobody watched it. But there is a bit of a pattern. They start out with varying degrees of mediocre to crap and all end like crap. And in the first episode of She-Hulk, not a single one of my expectations was subverted. As a matter of fact, it was much worse than I thought it'd be. Now, the writers have very quickly and very simply shown us that Jennifer is a great lawyer, but during the entire middle part of this thankfully very short episode, we find out that she's just a better and smarter Hulk than Smart Hulk. This entire segment of the content exemplifies, I think even better than Captain Marvel, the hero's journey, and I don't think there's a single scene that shows just how far the MCU has fallen into MCU than this.
Well, here's the thing, Bruce. I'm great at controlling my anger. I do it all the time. But when I'm catcalled in the street, when incompetent men explain my own area of expertise to me, I do it pretty much every day, because if I don't, I will get called emotional or difficult, or I might just literally get murdered. So I'm an expert at controlling my anger because I do it infinitely more than you.
Instead of pointing out the obvious, like Bruce surviving trauma, surviving suicide, surviving his first love's dad trying to kill him with the might of the US government, his second love sacrificing herself to save the world, we'll just do this. Quarter Black Garrett, why don't you show them how this scene should have gone?
Well, here's the thing, Bruce. I'm great at controlling my anger. I do it all the time. But when I'm catcalled in the street, when incompetent men explain my own area of expertise to me, I do it pretty much every day, because if I don't, I will get called emotional or difficult, or I might just literally get murdered. So I'm an expert at controlling my anger because I do it infinitely more than you.
Oh my God, getting catcalled and questioned about my job performance, it's so much worse than that. They also got my drink wrong at Starbucks. Sure, it's the first episode and we could actually be starting a journey with Jennifer Walters, who has an actual character arc. It would be the first time in a Disney Plus series, but I think it's far more likely we'll end up what we've gotten before, a series filled with plot holes and forgotten story threads. The criticisms of Marvel of late have been the humor not landing or not being there at all, there being no stakes, the legacy characters getting completely vandalized, and the new characters being insufferable, annoying, or boring, all surrounded by incredibly cringe dialogue. And you get all of that here, and then Hulk and She-Hulk fight for no reason, then Jen leaves. This brings us to, thankfully, the final scene. Did I mention the CGI is absolutely terrible? Well, not as bad as the editing, because this is the single worst edited scene in all of Marvel with some of the worst CGI, and let's just go over it together, shall we? Jennifer is going to win her case against the toxic males who caused a bunch of accidental deaths. That's about as much as we know. Then Titania comes blasting in, and Jennifer thinks about turning into She-Hulk longer than the actual fight lasts. Now, prior to this, I have no idea what Titania was doing with the court bailiffs slap fighting. I have no idea where this bench came from, and after it was thrown on Titania, I have no idea where it went, and there's no way around it. I know some people like this, and I have no explanation for that because this was awful.
Who the hell are you? Jennifer Walters, attorney at law.
Again, it's a damn shame. I would argue that you should have introduced She-Hulk right after or just before Black Widow, but timing is everything, and this is the worst possible time to come out with a series like this, when Marvel has become an absolute joke, and not the kind you laugh with, the kind you laugh at. And unfortunately, they're taking the OG characters like the Hulk with them. I guess the good news is they're running out of characters to vandalize. Again, the CGI was terrible, the editing was awful, the directing was subpar, and the dialogue was absolute trash. But we can wrap it up with this must-see series. If there was ever any question on whether or not the MCU Phase 4 has earned that title, this should dispel all of it. This is quintessential MCU. If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you heard, I thank you for listening this long. I will see you in the next video.
Nerdrotic.com